Automotive Electronics Test 5. Technician A says, all right, you ready? Y'all paying attention, right? Technician A says, a 12.6 volt open circuit voltage reading indicates a fully charged battery. Technician B says a hydrometer reading of 12.65 or 1.265 indicates the battery cell has the proper electrolyte specific gravity. Who is correct about that?
Both of them.
Both of them. Now, you know, one of the things that we do in electrical one is we'll take a battery and we'll measure the voltage of each cell. You're supposed to measure it. You're supposed to, charge it, a little bit first, and then let it level out and get rid of your surface charge, and then you go from cell to cell. Basically, you're going to dip one of your probes, and you got to use something like an old coat hanger or something for your probe so you don't mess up your meter in the water. Going across like that, and that's what we do here. We get that battery, and you'll see this worksheet sooner or later, in electrical one. The ones of you. All right, now see here, you're going to measure here, then you're going to measure here, here. See how you're overlapping there? And then you measure there, and then you measure here. You add these two readings together because one of them's going to be really small, and the other one's going to be not so much. But these ought to have usually about 2.1, and they shouldn't vary from one another. You'll have 6 readings if you count the one that you've added together from these other two, and they shouldn't vary more than 1/10 of a volt. You're supposed to check it when you're with it charging, and you're supposed to check it with it loaded, but you don't put the charger on it and leave it on it the whole time you're doing your test, or it'll keep going up. See, that's what I'm saying. All right, now let's go down here. If the battery of a vehicle has died 3 days in a row, each day the customer was able to start the car after they charged the battery. They're able to drive the car 150 miles, but the next morning the battery was again discharged. A battery current drain test, that's a parasitic drain test, revealed a 10 milliamp drain. So Technician A says the current drain is excessive and it could be the source of the problem. Technician B says further testing is required, but it is possible that the battery may need to be replaced. Technician B is the only one that's right. What is the acceptable amount of parasitic drain that you can have?
0.2.
Well, no, not voltage drop. I'm talking about parasitic drain. Parasitic drain generally is regarded to be, it needs to be less than 50 milliamps.
Okay.
Less than 50 milliamps. If you actually take a relay, if you take a plain old relay like I got laying around here somewhere, one of these relays, and you energize the coil on that relay, even if there's nothing going on these other terminals, if you energize that coil and keep that coil energized on the relays this size, it'll usually pull about that much, and it will usually kill a car battery in a couple of days. It's like you're letting, even if you've got a 55-gallon drum of water and you poke a little small hole in it, it's going to empty that drum eventually. And so just consider that parasitic drain is something that's letting it out, letting the water out of a barrel. Number 3, Technician H says during a load test, the battery voltage must not fall below 9.6 volts. Technician B says the load applied should be only half the cold cranking amp rating. Both of those guys are right. The load test is going to be half your cold cranking amp rating for 15 seconds. So for 15 seconds, you load it. If your cold cranking amps is 500, you load it at 250 for 15 seconds. It should stay above 9.6 volts. That's how that works. Got that? Now, on some of your, that Ranger out there will trip you up because you'll turn the key and try to start it, and it'll sound like it's spinning pretty good. But if on that engine controller, if the voltage goes below about 7.5 volts, it won't even operate the injectors. Even if it did operate the injectors, it would fire up, but it refuses to operate the injectors. A lot of the things that the computer's thinking about you don't know. Here's another little routine that was typed into engine controllers for years, and they're pretty much still doing it. How many of you know that when you let off and you're coasting, the fuel injectors are shut off completely? And the way that they type the program, not necessarily in the computer language, but it goes like this. At a calculated pulse width of less than 1.2 milliseconds and an engine speed greater than 1,200 RPM, the injectors are shut off.
So it basically kills the engine?
No, it kills the injectors because you're coasting. And your low and saying is you're coasting, your engine speed is up, but you've let completely off the gas. It doesn't need to put fuel in there because you're doing the engine braking thing. If it does put fuel in there, you're going to have raw gas coming out the back of it, all this kind of stuff. So it shuts them off. That's an emissions thing and economy and all that sort of stuff. Number 4. How may batteries be rated? Number 4. Any of the above. They can rate them ampere hours, reserve capacity, cold cranking amps. Which of the following statements is not true of a replacement battery? A, it may have the same rating as the original battery. B, it may have a higher rating than the original battery. C, it may have a lower rating than the original battery. That's the one that is wrong. You're not supposed to put one in there with a lower rating than the original battery. Battery electrolyte is a mixture of water and what other element?
Sulfuric acid.
All right, number 6 is, what is that, sulfuric acid, did you say? Yeah, everybody knew that anyway. Incidentally, if you get sulfuric acid on your blue jeans, that's the last you'll see of them.
Yeah, it sucks.
And how many of you guys have ever been there, standing there when a battery blew up?
Not me. I don't want to be.
I was in the vicinity, but I wasn't right there.
Sounds like a shotgun going off, don't it? Haboom! It's like somebody done bombed you or something. I was taking a battery terminal off a Dodge pickup in 1978. Did this right here, and it went boom! All that, my arm caught all that stuff.
Did it hurt?
Yeah, it stung and burned. All that acid hit my arm and all that. But at least it didn't go in my eyes at the time. I wasn't wearing safety glasses at the time either. But see, it happened without warning. There was no reason why that battery should have blown up that I knew of. Huh?
Was it swelled up?
You couldn't tell. I don't remember it being swelled up, but I do remember I put my wrench on there, made one turn on that battery cable bolt, and it exploded right then. I don't know why. It didn't stink. I didn't smell no sulfuric acid. It just blew up just totally without warning. Scared pretty good, but I don't usually jump when I get scared because my reflexes are so slow. You know what I mean? About the time I'm getting ready to jump, I've caught myself and I don't want to get around to jumping. And my wife's a different story, But she'll jump real fast. All right, number 7. Let's see. Which of the following is an indication of how well a battery would perform if the charging system of a vehicle failed? That's D. Reserve capacity. That's not too hard to figure out. How many volts can each cell of an automobile battery produce? What did I write up on the board a while ago? 2.1. Okay. What's the principal cause of battery water loss? Any idea? That's going to be D, yeah. How many of you guys know why it is that some of the, like for instance, that Dodge van out there, the battery cables have not been cleaned on that van in 2 or 3 or 4 years, but there's no chalk on them whatsoever. You notice how clean they look? They hadn't been, now they can oxidize and stuff, but as far as that green chalky stuff, they ain't got none. And some really nice, decent looking vehicles, will have this red cover over the battery so that you won't short something out. And you just, since you're not, that red cover's there, a lot of times you don't think about it. But when you pull that red cover up, it'll just be a solid mass of that green acid nonsense. And why do some of them chalk up their terminals and some of them don't? You'll find a negative terminal that looks really good on a battery. The positive one looks absolutely horrible. Good morning, sunshine.
Yeah. Perfect morning. You better stop telling me what the hell I got to do.
Yeah. Slap a taste out your mouth.
Yeah, this morning I will.
She's in a foul humor. Okay. Sorry about that. Nobody cross Chelsea, you get in trouble. Okay, number 10.
I will.
Yeah. 450 cold cranking amp. She's trying to trip your trigger. 450 cold cranking amp average. Whoa, let me follow up with what I said. So let me ask you again. Why is it that like the positive cable or the negative, it could be either one, is really horribly corroded, but the other one may look really good? Lose. You got any ideas, guys?
I don't know for real. I never thought about it.
You ever thought about it? All right. Oh, mention that just a minute while I'm here. Don't worry about that. All right. See this battery right here? Now this is the one.
That ain't no better.
This is the one that you act like is really heavy, and you hand it to somebody and they throw it up in there because they think it's heavy when it's not, But I kind of felt, don't do that a whole lot, because one day I handed one to this teenage boy, like that. And when he grabbed it, he went, pow, and he hit himself. But, I mean, I felt bad about that because he busted his lip. But see these little lead posts right here on this one here? All right, now, that is actually inserted into that plastic. That lead in that plastic is not one piece, is it? Okay, so down inside there, you've got your liquid acid, and it can come past that post, between that post and that plastic, and leak past there. So, did you ever think about why those little fuzzy washers seem to help?
I always don't ever, they don't help me.
Yeah, well, you must be using really crappy batteries with a bad leak. But anyway, if a battery has got a really good seal around here when they build it, it's not as bad a leak. Now, something else that contributes to it is overcharging, which causes the stuff to bubble out. But these caps right here are made to catch that vapor and let it drip back. These caps are made they're made to catch that vapor and drip it back in there.
That's why they're big.
Yeah, and they got a little vent right here, but they let pressure out without the acid going out there with it and getting on there, hopefully. Something else that can kill a battery, this is sort of on another subject. I had a Thunderbird that came in one day, and it had between this terminal, between this post and this post, it had ants that were piled up about 1/4 inch thick. They just kept climbing up there. Ants like electricity for some reason or another. They kept climbing up there, and they had made a bridge between one post and the other, and that drain going through the bodies of those dead ants killed that battery.
Do what?
That's the only time I've ever seen that. But yeah, there was a big old pile of ants on top of that battery. And put this right here up. This is a dummy battery I got from a tire store. You know, they let me have. Because I mean, for stuff like I just did, it's really good for a demo. All right, now right here we got number 10. Let's act like we know what we're doing here. So a 450 cold cranking out battery is being load tested. Incidentally, you all got that, didn't you? It's leaking acid around the post a lot of the time. Sometimes you can smear dielectric grease around that post and it'll stop that.
Oh, it will?
Yeah, I've done that before, and that seems to help. That dielectric grease that like you put on tune-up spark plug wire, just smear a little bit around the base of the post. It'll help with that. I'll tell you what it won't do. It won't hurt a daggum thing. 450 cold cranking out battery is being tested. What would the correct load be on a 450? Remember, listen to what I just said up here. What did I say? What's the load? Half of that. What's half of 450?
225.
225. Think of it like money, just like you're reading your mic, right? When using a battery starter tester to make a battery load test, turn the control knob to draw battery current at a rate equal to what? Half the battery's cold cranking out rating. Number 11 is D. Number 12. Got number 12 here. At the end of a 3-minute charge test, the voltage reading for a satisfactory 12-volt battery should not exceed what? 15.5 volts. What does it mean? You guys, I was talking to y'all the other day. What does it mean? You put that thing like on a 40-amp charge, and you're measuring it with your voltmeter while you're charging it. You don't want to see it go over 15.5 volts. If it goes over 15.5 volts, it's sulfated.
What do you mean sulfate?
And it means the plates are coated with sulfur, and it's not going to be efficient. So that is a go, no-go test, huh? You don't. You just, well, what you can do, and this is sort of a, silly, but you can run it all the way down and charge it back up really fast. And sometimes the sulfur, it'll get hot and the sulfur will crack off the plates, but it also lands in the bottom of the battery, So basically, if you've got a sulfated battery, it just needs to be replaced, basically. And car batteries aren't made to run all the way down and charge all the way back up repeatedly. It ruins them over time. But deep cycle marine batteries, like what you use in your trolling motor boat, they're just fine with that.
You can use
That's why they call them deep. Yeah, you can. That's why they call them deep cycle batteries, because you can go all the way dead and come all the way back up, and they're designed to handle that kind of trauma. But car batteries aren't. I mean, you can kill a car battery 2 or 3 times, but if you might notice on a lot of our trainer cars, the batteries just go bad. Because several of them got little parasitic drains, or they don't, get charged up like they should, and they wind up having to be jumped off. But ultimately, I got to replace the battery early because the stupid batteries are not made to run down, charge up. If I had any sense, I'd find deep cycle marine batteries to put in all my training cars, but I had never done that because some of them you just can't get a deep cycle marine battery to fit unless you change the cables out. Number 13 is How much of a change in specific gravity readings does temperature compensation involve for every 10 degrees? Now, that's a nice little number, isn't it? That's A, 0.004.
So it's changed that much with how hot it gets, right?
Yeah, in other words, yeah, you know, obviously, you've seen on there the cold cranking amps is different at 0 than it is at 32 degrees. You know, the temperature of the battery is going to affect that. Technician A says a fully charged battery will not freeze as easily as a discharged one. Technician B says the specific gravity of a fully charged battery is about 1.1. Fully discharged battery is about 1.1. That's 14. That's C. Both those guys are right. A dead battery will freeze easier than when it's charged.
I've never seen one freeze before.
Yeah, we don't live in the frozen Northland either, you know. Did you know that in Siberia they use vodka for brake fluid?
Do they really do that?
Because brake fluid freezes.
They really do use the vodka?
Yeah, because that's the only thing that won't freeze is alcohol up there. You know, I mean, it gets so cold up there that if you've got a big wrench in your hand and you drop it on concrete, it'll shatter like a piece of glass into a bunch of little pieces. It goes so brittle. 60 below 0. You know?
Man, I owe somebody a lot of money. I dropped one of those wrenches.
Yeah, I know. But them kids still walk to school up there.
I would.
They're tough, you know. All right, number 15.
So how does the vodka work as brake fluid?
It doesn't compress, and also it's too low of a boiling point to use down here. But up there where it's really, really cold, the brakes are going to be cold all the time anyway. But you can't compress fluids even if it is alcohol. Years ago, before they made antifreeze, to keep the engine blocks from freezing, they'd pour alcohol in the radiator, mix it with the water, you know. I mean, alcohol has got a super low freezing point.
I wouldn't be going very far.
Huh?
I wouldn't be going very far.
Yeah.
Trying to drink water in this drink.
Well, those Russian pilots used to drink the jet fuel that they put in their fighter planes because it was alcohol. Their planes, their MiG-25s and all, they would use
You ever seen
alcohol.
that movie Red Tails?
Yeah.
That was a good movie.
Yeah, it
I
was.
watched that last night.
Yeah, that's a good show. Good show. All right. Let's see. The condition. Wait a minute. Why should specific gravity readings be temperature compensated? Why should specific gravity readings be temperature compensated? Number 15. A, yeah, they're a more accurate indicator of the actual state of charge when you do that. Number 16, the condition of a battery cable end where it connects to the battery post is questionable. Technician A says a battery leakage test will determine the quality of the connection. Technician B says a battery terminal voltage drop test could be used to determine the quality of the connection. Hey, Sean, what's up with your bad self? Mortar strike wake you up this morning? All right, number B. That's a B. Now let me briefly tell you a little short story here that's battery related. My partner, this old guy that I worked with, you know, and did construction in the summer when I was a young teenager and all that stuff. He had a tractor, and it had a battery cable that looked like this. Obviously, just like any other battery cable. All right, and that battery cable. Me and him were working on his tractor one day. I mean, we were looking at his tractor. This is the positive battery cable or the negative one. I don't remember which one it was. And what we did, and at that time, I did not, I was 15, 16 years old. I didn't know the principle of voltage drop and had no voltmeter. But what I did know was that the battery was good and strong. Because we took the one out of his pickup. There was no corrosion on any terminal, and all the terminals looked really, really good. But this one here was one of those molded lead terminals like you see that was made at the factory. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, but this copper is still inside that insulation going up in there, and it's, hooked up to the terminal. And there, and I hadn't seen this since then, just exactly like it happened here, but where that copper was supposed to be making its connection up in here was, if I had measured voltage drop from here to here, I would have read 12 volts when I was trying to start it. Because that connection inside there was so bad that there was a good strong power here, there was good strong power here, but nothing was going into that cable. And that really kind of messed it up. If they're all corroded, you kind of can see it, you know.
Yeah.
But on that one there, they didn't. So I took that silly thing and I held it over here on one of the steering parts on the tractor. It was real heavy iron. And I took a hammer and I just beat that sucker and made it, flattened it a little bit, and we put it back on there and fired right up. That's it. All right. Number 16. Well, voltage drop would have, if I'd have had a meter, would have told me just that quick what was wrong there. Well, that's what you're supposed to do, is measure from the post to here. Sometimes you'll see the post is good and bright with your test light. When you go to the other side, it'll be dim right here, there won't be no light at all. You know, and it won't always look corroded, but oxidation can be where you can't see it. Number 16. Let's see. Yeah, we've already done that one. Which of the following statements about nickel metal hydride cells is not true? Number 17. When a nickel metal hydride cell discharges, hydrogen moves from the anode to the cathode electrode. You ever heard of an anode and a cathode? The anode is positive and the cathode is negative, right? You got that? All right. Nickel metal hydride batteries have an anode electrode that contains nickel hydroxide. The alkaline electrolyte has no active role in the chemical reaction. The plates are separated by a sheet of fine fiber saturated with potassium hydroxide. Now, this is stuff that everybody ought to know, right? B. Nickel metal hydride batteries have an anode electrode that contains nickel hydroxide. Now, do you know what the difference between alkaline and acid is?
Alkaline, that's things on the left-hand side of the periodic table. Acid or acidic things are generally on the right-hand side.
All right. Now, what is the pH of water?
7.
Huh? 7. When you go one way, you're going acid. When you go the other way, you're going alkaline.
Down is acid, up is base.
There you go. And that's what he was saying. Base, yeah. Okay, so if you're out of balance, how many of you know that you can take a voltmeter or a little bitty light bulb that's kind of weak and stick both of the wires hooked to that thing into a lemon and it'll light up that bulb? Because the lemon's is like a little battery. It's an electron. Huh? Yeah, there's enough acid there to where it'll do that. So if it's out of balance, those electrons are going to try to flow. Okay, which of the following statements about battery ratings is true? The ampere hour rating is defined as the amount of steady current that a fully charged battery can supply for 1 hour at 80 degrees Fahrenheit without the cell voltage falling below a predetermined voltage. Is that right? The cold cranking amperage rating. See, when they got really long answers like this on these multiple choice tests, with all due respect to the writer of this textbook, that's kind of stupid. You don't need to have a long thing you got to parse and sort out. That's worse than a technician A and B question in my mind. All right, that's a C. The cranking amperage rating expresses the number of amperes a battery can deliver at 32 degrees for 30 seconds and maintain at least 1.2 volts per cell. Okay, the reserve capacity rating is, that's the next one. And so it's going to be C is what it is. Technician A says most hybrid vehicles have a high voltage battery pack. Is he right? Some of you guys know the answer to this. Is Technician A right? Do most hybrid vehicles have a high voltage battery pack? All right. Technician B says most vehicles have a 12 volt battery. It's going to be both those guys. And for this particular test here, number 20, Technician A says the best way to charge the high voltage battery is by allowing the engine to run. And that's in hybrid stuff. Technician B says usually an onboard jump assist method is available to start the engine if the high voltage battery state of charge is too low. Who is correct about that? Actually, that's only true on the Ford Escape. And when they came out with the Ford Escape, you got a 12 volt battery up front. Even on hybrid vehicles that run on 300, 400, or 500 volts out of that main battery pack, you've still got your instrument cluster and all of the stuff that you use in there, like your AC blower motor and all that. They run off 12 volts. So you got to have a 12 volt side of that system too to operate that stuff. And the high voltage side of it has got to charge up the 12 volt side of it. But anyway, the Toyotas, for a long time, if you ran that Toyota below about 20% charge, the only way to charge it was to get a special battery charger shipped in from Japan that they just loaned you, and then you'd have to charge it up with that. But now Ford, what they did, you charged up your 12-volt battery and you pushed this button, and it would slowly use the 12-volt battery to put juice back in the battery pack through the electronics. And then you'd charge up a 12-volt pack of and punch that button again, and then your high-voltage battery would come back. That was really a smart way to do it because everybody pretty much had their own battery charger that way. All right, now let's whip on through this next test here. And you might notice in these I'm separating these days into these, every day has got its pack of stuff that's with it. And so words to the wise, you'll pay attention to that. And, you can get caught up in a lot of the stuff we're doing in the shop, and you can wind up getting really far behind on your worksheets to the point where you're really discouraged. You don't want to go there. You know what I'm saying? All right.